Hi, I'm Lorraine from Apathy Speech Therapy, and today I'm joined by Gary Boyle and Richelle Flanagan, both of who are really great Parkinson's advocates in Ireland. So today, because it's Parkinson's Awareness Month, we are going to talk about Parkinson's, and we'll focus on the importance of speech therapy for people who have got Parkinson's disease. So Richelle, I'll start with you. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about when you were diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah, okay. Nice to be here. So basically I was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 47, so approximately 3 years ago. I was actually pregnant at the time and with my youngest child, who you might hear in the background during this. But basically I'm a dietitian is what my job is, and basically I noticed when I was writing in a record card that my writing was very small, and what really alarmed me was that I couldn't make my writing any bigger, and I thought that was a bit strange. So I looked up, as you do, to see what the symptom might be, or why couldn't I make my writing bigger, and I came across the term micrographia, which basically is small handwriting, and the only thing associated in the main with it was Parkinson's disease. So I thought, maybe I'll go and speak to my GP about it and ask about being referred to a neurologist, and that started my journey to getting diagnosed. So I was officially diagnosed through a DAT scan once my daughter had stopped breastfeeding, because you can't get a DAT scan during pregnancy or breastfeeding. So so that was basically the beginnings of my journey with Parkinson's.
Right. And was it long before you were diagnosed?
I suppose it was really delayed because of my pregnancy. I think I probably would have been diagnosed earlier, but the only thing was I was in a position, I was going privately. So I had to pay for my DAT scan, which cost I don't know, I can't remember now, it was over €1,000 to get the DAT scan done, but I was really keen to find out. I think I was in the public setting. Could have been a lot longer from what I know of other people who either are waiting for DAT scan or never get one. I suppose I was offered it because they felt I was young, fit and healthy. My symptoms are very, mild. So I was kind of put through tests like an MRI and nerve tests and things like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'd say, it could have been a longer journey if I was in the public setting, but initially I was in the private setting.
How about you, Gary? When were you first diagnosed with Parkinson's?
Hi, Lorraine. Thanks for having me on this segment. I was diagnosed about 10 years ago, a little over 10, September 2009. Actually, it was September 2nd. It was a Thursday. It was 9:30 in the morning, but that's irrelevant. I'd gone through a period of about 2 years trying to figure out what was going on, because a bit like Richelle, my writing was appalling and it was very small and it was getting smaller. My right arm was hanging limp on my side when I'd go walking. When I was running, it was fine. I was grand. But the other thing I noticed when I was walking, I was limping a lot because my right leg was dragging. So I kind of was a bit like the zombie apocalypse. I was walking with my leg and arm kind of just reluctantly coming along with me, and I knew that probably that wasn't good. Mm. But it took about 2 years of investigation to finally come to a conclusion. And I'll never forget the actual day of the diagnosis delivery. My now ex-consultant kind of looked at me and he said, yeah, you have Parkinson's disease, but don't worry, it won't kill you. And then he kind of got up from sitting in front of me and he started tapping something on his laptop, and I was absolutely stunned, because I was 44 at the time, and I was thinking, what Parkinson's disease? How is that possible? And I said to him, I'm 44, I'm not 74. And he said, that's nothing. I had a girl here last week, she's 29, she has it as well. So I just kind of took myself out of his surgery and somehow managed to struggle back to Joan, my wife, here at home. In the kind of the young onset category, kind of have a story that some of us are suspecting, and some of us are kind of completely in the totally not expecting it kind of space. But all of us kind of seem to have gotten a delivery of diagnosis that's been pretty poor. The bedside manner is non-existent and stuff like that. Mm. And I went into kind of 5 years of totally didn't want to know about it. I got those pills that are in, it's really funny. I mean, this is the start of kind of the black and white kind of side of this kind of damn disease. He gave me a prescription for really small pills. And one of the problems you have when you have Parkinson's is, you know, it's very difficult. You're trying to control your finger movements. And when you're trying to pick these pills up or push them out, yeah, it's difficult. But I just spent 5 years taking the pills and just ignoring it and saying, this can't be happening, but it was. And it took about 5 years, and I got to the point where I was, as I said, my arm was really kind of gone at that point. My leg was very bad. Funnily enough, I could run better than I could walk. I don't really understand why. I think it was just the momentum of pushing myself forward kind of got my leg moving and my body moving. But everything was a mess, and I was losing weight rapidly. And that was because my dietitian told me my tremor was going the whole time, and that requires energy, and it's burning off energy that you're taking in. It was very difficult for me. The job I had I really loved my job. It was a great job. It was I was kind of head of a section in HR. So I was kind of, doing a lot of things and going to a lot of functions and stuff like that, but I couldn't, I'd get some food and I wouldn't be able to cut the food on the half of my plate because I wasn't able to hold the knife properly. So I was sending loads of food back and kind of going, I'd really like that, but anyway, can't eat it. And that's another reason why I was losing weight. So everything was in a bit of a mess until I got to the point where my consultant then said to me, you're suffering from stress, and stress is not good for you because it's kind of impacting the depletion of dopamine in your brain. It's occurring at a far more rapid pace, so you need to take yourself out of that environment. And the only thing I could think of was in our work where I worked, we have a program called income protection, and I always thought of it as something for somebody who had a catastrophic injury all of a sudden, like maybe had a fall or something like that. But actually, I was kind of submitted into the scheme, went through it, and as my GP said to me, Gary, I'll be putting down this form. There's no cure for what you have. Are you okay with that? And I said, well, is there a cure? He said, well, of course not. There isn't, But he said, that's why you should go on to this, because you're going rapidly downhill as it is, and it won't take long for that to kind of happen. So went forward, was put onto that plan by the insurance company, and I haven't really looked back since. I mean, I still, of course, have Parkinson's. It's moving along, it's doing its whole deteriorating trick, I never say it's progressing because I don't understand why you would use the word progress for something like an incurable disease. So I always say it's deteriorating, my condition. But I've managed to kind of, in the 5 years since I've been, not in work anymore, I've dedicated a lot of my time to activity. And some of the main activities I do are things like Irish set dancing, which is actually a recognised therapy for movement disorder people. I do a lot of running. I do a lot of Pilates. Well, before we were kind of in the lockdown situation, and I'm doing a lot of walking, and kind of a lot of the gyms that I've been on are now online, and we're doing that, and it's working out very, very well. But I really feel I have to keep moving, because if I don't, I won't be able to control the movements that'll happen if I'm not kind of active in that space. And I've been very fortunate to get into that space, to meet a lot of people who, like yourself, Lorraine, who are doing amazing stuff that I would never have heard of, and I would never have the opportunity to kind of champion and say, this is what we need. We need a multi-disciplinary approach to what's going on. The pills on their own aren't enough, and kind of the speech and language therapy on its own isn't enough. We combine everything together, and we get a far greater impact. And it's just not being said, and it's just not being resourced for that way. And certainly we could be in a situation where we'd need to spend a little more upfront with people when they're first diagnosed, but that will definitely have a positive impact later on. And by that I mean people won't need to be hospitalised or anything like that till much later, hopefully not at all, if we give people the power and the tools to kind of understand what they're going through and understand what they can do to alleviate that.
Yeah,
there are now a pile of stuff there, and probably shut up for the moment, but that's the space I'm in.
I think the example you have given us is an example of someone who found it really hard to be diagnosed and who has come to terms with it and who is now living with Parkinson's, but doing lots of really positive things to keep it, I guess, to stop it from deteriorating much more quickly. You know, if you weren't doing all that exercise, it would have a much worse impact on you, I would imagine. And that applies to speech and to movement and everything across the board.
Yeah, of course, another one of those sweet ironies with Parkinson's is I got a huge amount, really, massive kind of change in my whole outlook when I went through LSVT Loud, which is, as you know, the really impactful speech and language therapy class. And Richelle, I know you got a massive impact from that as well through the kind of the swallow side of it. For me, it was the communication side. I didn't know that my voice was fading. I didn't know that people were kind of going, can't hear him, and that's an awful thing, and so many of us who are in that space of not knowing the importance and the impact of a really quality program like LSVT Loud. We're not talking loud, we're not conversing loud because we don't know. We haven't been told, we haven't gone through it. And once you go through it, you really do learn. And we have a great group in the health clinic where I did the LSVT Loud. And 3 years later, we're all talking louder. We're still meeting. Our support group is fantastic. And it's kind of evidence-based proof that this thing really works. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of something we can probably talk about another time, but it's really positive.
Gary, I think it's really important to highlight that a lot of people with Parkinson's don't realise they are speaking quieter. I think from my own experience, most of the patients I've worked with, they've come in and they've said their spouse is deaf because they don't understand why they're not being understood. But very often they are speaking quietly and they're not aware of it. And then when they have LSVT, very often the results are very positive. And as you said, Gary, having that maintenance group, that support group and the peer support is also so important as well.
It's wonderful.
So Richelle, what have your experiences of speech therapy been, or LSVT?
Yeah, well, I suppose I just echo everything Gary's saying, with regards about multidisciplinary approach. But it's the same with regard to, Gary mentioned about the exercise helping to improve that. And I felt the same principle should apply to swallow and speech and all our muscles, because basically the lack of dopamine affects our muscles everywhere in our body. So a lot of people don't realise that it's the non-motor symptoms that often have the biggest impact on people with Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And I suppose the thing for me that really drew my attention to it was obviously researching myself, but I went to a thing called the World Parkinsons Congress in Kyoto. Mm-hmm. June. That was June of last year. And it was the most amazing experience because it's the biggest congress of scientific research and also medical research. And there's also therapies there as well, but it includes people with Parkinson's. So there's no conference like that in the world. And it's really powerful to have the patient at the center of the question,
Yeah, so important actually as well.
Yeah. But I attended a speech and language therapy presentation by a Japanese speech and language therapist, and it just blew me away in terms of through my own research, I kind of felt, well, I should be getting in early with my voice exercise as much as I should be getting in early with, exercising my arms and my limbs. Mm-hmm. And she basically, corroborated that and said that anyone with Parkinson's should get a videofluoroscopy, is what she said, on diagnosis, and should be assessed at baseline to prevent, the swallow deteriorating. And I think the thing that really brought it, in sort of flashing lights for me was that, one of the biggest killers of people with Parkinson's is aspiration, pneumonia, and, that side of things. And she kind of put up a whole list of reasons why we as people with Parkinson's die because of our swallow problems. And that was really stark. And
it's a shocking statistic.
Yeah, huge, and also through my own research, I looked at, it says that actually 4 out of 5 people with Parkinson's don't know they have a swallow issue, but actually 80% of them do, mm-hmm. but they don't actually realize. So it's a bit like they don't know they're not swinging their arm. They don't know that they're not speaking loudly. they don't realize that running to the toilet is not normal. It's to do with the Parkinsons, not to do with, them being postmenopausal, for example, or, so there's all these kind of things. So for me, that was a real eye opener in terms of, she did actual video shots of people who got LSVT therapy, and then was able to show the scans of their swallow and how bad it was before and how it improved after the LSVT Loud. But also, that was in terms of the LSVT Loud improves obviously your speech in terms of your loudness, but it actually helped swallow strength as well. So
that's really interesting, because I suppose a lot of people wouldn't realize that it can help improve your swallow as well.
Yeah, I didn't know, and that really so I went home, and I suppose the other thing actually that I was, in terms of my swallow, I've no problems. I don't choke on anything. I hadn't noticed any major symptoms, but I had this sensation that I kept on having to clear my throat, and as if I had a lump in my throat. And I mentioned this in the question and answer session in Kyoto. And several of people with Parkinson's came up to me after and said, I have exactly the same problem, and no one's taking me seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady, so she acknowledged it, the speech and language therapist there. So basically, with all that information, I went home and I contacted my neurologist and said, I want a referral to a speech and language therapist. They didn't see me in the hospital, but they referred me to community. It probably took, I think it was probably 6 to 8 months, and that was with me basically ringing incessantly, because I know from my work with the INDI, my professional body, that it's only really those who shout loudest, unfortunately, get the therapy care often that they need. So I
ideal.
Yeah. And actually I was asked by the community manager at the time, would you mind writing a letter in, because it's only by people asking for the services that we can prove that there's a need. Like, it's just, the research shows that we need it. So why do we have to jump up and down to get something that is life-saving and is going to, as Gary said, reduce the cost to the HSE ultimately? Because if we keep on going in with aspiration pneumonias, that is a huge bed blocking time that could actually be, reduced by getting in early. So, I mean, I initially as well, sorry, I finished on this, when I went to the community dietitian, who was brilliant, but the initial view was a bit like the physio side. Oh, you're fairly high functioning and, don't seem to have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to push and say, I have the sensation there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you more.
Perhaps less of a tendency here to do that early intervention. Whereas I think in Japan, they're very focused on early intervention across the board, from what I was told when I was there. Right. But I think here perhaps it's treating later rather than early. But in practice, we know that if you have the early intervention, it's so key.
Yeah, it seems to be a case of we're kind of afraid to kind of spend, allocate resources, spend a bit of money at the initial stage. We hear things from consultants saying to their patients, well, you're okay, you're grand for the moment, And I'm kind of thinking, what the hell does for the moment mean? I mean, for the moment means, it doesn't mean anything, because every moment you let go is a moment gone, is a minute gone. It's another kind of accumulating time frame where you're not actually treating the kind of the pieces of the disease that are manifesting themselves that you can treat. And if everybody on kind of diagnosis was referred to every therapy under the sun, OT, SLT, dietitian, counselling, you name it, throw it all in there. And if that was the kind of multidisciplinary approach that was adopted right at the start,
mm-hmm.
there'd be a massive release of resources that's currently being tied up by people who haven't gone through that position. I mean, the idea that people in their late 60s and 70s could be in nursing homes or in hospitals because they didn't hear about LSVT big, they didn't hear about exercise in general, they didn't hear about talking louder and putting more effort into their voice, notwithstanding that they didn't go to LSVT Loud, that they didn't kind of check their kind of, what's their diet like, how are they mixing kind of the drugs they're taking with the food that they're eating and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of information that can be given out that is really powerful and can really arm and kind of assist the person who has the diagnosis to take care of themselves. And it's not a case of washing your hands of the person. it's absolutely completely the opposite. It's giving the person who has that diagnosis, us, the kind of the power to kind of, not kind of just be helpless and watch yourself fade away, because that's what, that's what I was doing. I literally was fading away. All my clothes were falling off me, and it's just a case of we have to kind of get much stronger and much louder with what we're doing, so that people can understand, okay, there's a lot you can do. It's not a life sentence or a death sentence. It's just something that we don't have a cure for. But here's a whole arsenal of things that you can have, that you can deal with in your own way. And let's face it, like as Richelle said, yourself, the patient should be at the center of this. The patient should be the focus. The patient is the expert. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
and we're scared of saying that, but we need to kind of be much more vocal.
Yeah, and I think.
Okay, so Richelle.
Okay.
Do you agree with what Gary has just said?
Yeah, well, I think, we were talking about the multidisciplinary approach, and there actually is a big study called Prime PD, which is starting in Bristol in the UK, and actually the program manager is an Irish dietitian. But it is involving Radboud University, which has got Professor Bas Blum behind it. So he's a real advocate for multidisciplinary care. And having the patient at the centre, of the care, and that basically the nurse is kind of like the conduit to reach out to all the different therapies, So, it's definitely the way forward for us. It'll be really interesting to see what the outcomes of that research is. But, I think, it is about getting in early. And interesting enough, in the current kind of COVID climate, in terms of, e-health and e-care, there couldn't be a better medium for people with Parkinson's, because you've got people who maybe have walking problems, mobility problems. You have people who are maybe trying to balance work and so for example, speech and language therapy, be fantastic. I reached out to you because I had been advised to try a thing called an expiratory strength muscle training tool. And one of the risks for us with COVID, for example, is we're under 70. But if we get it, we have a high risk of complications because of our swallow issues. So that made me really conscious of wanting to get going on my, this tool. Yeah, so I bought it. I got it within 2 days. So that's where I actually reached out on Twitter, and you responded to me, and I was like, why can't I get this online? And we had a consultation, and you showed me how to use it, and off I went.
Yeah.
So
I think it shows, I guess, the power of teletherapy. It's quick, it's easy,
yeah,
it's possible. Absolutely.
I think what I'd love to see is that this is really used for. Sorry, just giving my. That is used in terms of therapy for people with Parkinson's after COVID as well, and truly gone.
Absolutely.
Surely.
Absolutely. It's like you're absolutely right, Richelle. We're learning so much at the moment. This is an awful time with the COVID-19 virus. It's really horrible.
Some positives out of it.
Yeah, there are.
More telehealth eventually.
Yeah. I think it would have huge impacts for us, and I think it's logical that you could do LSVT Loud. I showed you the tool for the expiratory muscle strength. We did that over Zoom as well.
We've been doing the Irish set dancing over a thing called Blue Jeans, which is another platform, something similar to Zoom, maybe something similar to Skype, etc. But it's been an absolutely wonderful experience, because the day we finished the classes that we'd been attending a couple of times a week, we were all unsure as to what was happening next, and some of us said, well, why don't we try doing this online? And a lot of people went, I don't like, there was a lot of resistance. And actually, it's turned out to be a wonderful experience. We have everybody attending. And in fact, we have more people attending the online classes than we had who attended the classes in person. And I'm probably not the oldest member of the group there, but there are plenty of people who are older than me who are learning about kind of connecting into kind of places like Zoom and Blue Jeans and stuff like that, and are loving it and are seeing all their friends. They're at home, but they're doing the exercises they're doing the Irish set dancing, they're moving, they're happy, and it's wonderful. And the alternative to that is people, like you say, Richelle, sitting at home doing nothing. That's an awful thing. That is really, it's awful to think that people with something like Parkinson's, or indeed any movement disorder, would be sitting at home doing nothing at a time when there's so much available for them to do, and keep looking after themselves and keep getting, steadily improving, as opposed to just, fading away.
Absolutely. I think that perhaps something that's hard is being motivated to do those things. It's perhaps, for some people, it is perhaps really hard to have to to get into those things. But when they do,
and actually that's a really good point, Lorraine, because like motivation is closely linked to kind of, depression and apathy and stuff like that. And apathy is such a big thing in Parkinson's. It's kind of, what's the point? All that kind of stuff. And as you can imagine, being at home on your own, maybe, or with a partner that you're not kind of conversing to because you think the partner is deaf and your partner thinks you're actually dumb, but I mean, moving that aside, I mean, it's not kind of the best environment. However, I have to say, everybody who's doing like what we're doing now, or doing their dancing or their gym or their whatever program it is, they're really getting the benefit from it now. So we have huge opportunities when COVID-19, when we finally beat that, we have huge opportunities in the delivery of care and the delivery of tools to people to help themselves. And yes, it might cost a little bit of a kind of a bump at the start, but my goodness, the possibilities are absolutely boundless, I think, once we get through COVID-19. And we really, like, I used to think that, we have to get a community hall for people and put them in there, and well, every town in Ireland has at least one parish hall and all that kind of stuff. We don't even need to do that now. All we need to do is kind of instruct people on how to operate. Maybe get a bunch of Zoom and Blue Jean licenses or something like that. I don't know. I don't mind. But the possibilities are there, and we really are reneging on, I think we're reneging on our responsibilities to people if we don't do something about this. And I would hold like all of us into kind of that. I would bring us all into that. I mean, the medical profession, again, a whole multidisciplinary approach towards it. We can have the HSE people, the data and technology people. I know Martin Curley pretty well. He's the head of technology in the HSE. Like, there's a golden opportunity here. Really fantastic. Sláinte care. We can come back to that. We can certainly influence the direction there using technology, given the experience we're having right now. And that's something we really should pay close attention to and not rest until it's kind of absolutely used to its greatest possibilities, which I think are many.
Actually, there's an article by a gastroenterologist from Telehospital today on that very fact about sláinte care, and that basically we need to grasp it with both hands in terms of how the HSE has managed to do so much in such a short period of time when everyone is behind it and there is just one tier health system. So I think that's really important message. But I think just Gary picks out a point there about apathy. What a lot of people don't realize is apathy is a symptom of Parkinson's. And so, if you think of, people when they say, and I know as a dietitian working with people, and they're saying, and obviously we'd encourage people to exercise as well as looking at their diet. And people are like, don't have the motivation or whatever. And there is that sense of, once you go out and exercise, you always feel better. And the thing with people with Parkinson's, and the thing with people with Parkinson's is that's the dopamine. So going back to Gary's point when he said he couldn't understand why he could run better than he could walk, it's because you basically produce dopamine when you exercise. So it has this temporary way of actually helping the body work better because you're producing more of what it needs, of whatever bits you have left. So the thing about apathy with Parkinson's is that it's really important for carers or family members to actually know that and actually really encourage or try and get them, because once they start doing it, they feel better, and that then has an effect of feeling better.
I suppose, Richelle, if we go back to LSVT, I guess one of the key components of that is praise and really encouraging someone. It's high motivation in a way, isn't it? Because you're telling the person at what level they are producing adequate loudness, and then you're really the reason keep doing it.
But the research actually, sorry.
No, I want to say
Sorry,
something, Michelle, because I think this is really important. You've just said something that is so obvious and makes such total sense, and nobody has said it to me ever before. I have said to every interaction I've had with my consultant and stuff like that, and in many kind of environments that I've been in, I've said I always found it easier to run than to walk. And you're absolutely right. It's because of the dopamine. But not one consultant, not one doctor, not one medical person has said that. And this is what I mean about kind of adopting a multidisciplinary approach, or kind of, evangelizing various things or talking about it. It'll bring into kind of, other things like what you were just talking about there, your experience, Michelle, and it'll help somebody else. So, I mean, now I know. It's so obvious. I know now, but like it was Richelle who told me. It wasn't flipping a certain consultant that I'm going to be seeing on Thursday, and I just think that is so, we need to get that. Somehow we need to capture that.
Yeah.
That can spell apathy straight away.
I suppose it's important as well is that for MDT professionals, so speech therapists, dietitians and physios and OTs to all be, to have links with the consultant. I think that's key as well. If we're all more of a team and we're all kind of telling each other what we're doing, that really helps as well.
Well, I think, you see, the other thing is the therapists generally have more time with the patient, so they get to know them better. They understand their social situation better than like when I go to see the consultant, my consultant is fantastic, and he does give me time because I go in with my list of questions. But generally, when you go into a hospital public appointment and you have an appointment at 9 o'clock, there's 40 other people probably has an appointment at 9 o'clock too, because they have a huge list.
Yeah.
Where with the therapist, generally you would have, at least 20 minutes, hopefully, and maybe half an hour. But I suppose in terms of going back to your point there around praise, again, the research would show that it's all about dopamine. It's about triggering so praise makes you want more praise. And that's why, going back to the point of e-health is really important with people with Parkinson's. Isolation is a real issue with Parkinson's. And part of that is because of the apathy and the lack of motivation. So people retreat into themselves. Mm-hmm. And that isn't really known. And so they retreat in themselves, they're suffering depression. And it's all treatable by actually knowing that apathy and motivation is a big part of dopamine. And so therapy is really important in that, because therapists, a big part of what they do, I know as a dietitian, is around cognitive behavior and that whole motivational interviewing. We're trained in that as therapists, as I know as dietitians are, and I'm sure speech and language therapy, in terms of just talking about praising. And so it's for me anyway, as a health professional, it's a no-brainer that we should be.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think also it shows that, I suppose, many patients are not inclined to advocate for themselves, and they're perhaps not inclined to look for services, and they aren't aware of what they could do.
Well,
and the thing is, a lot of patients, you're right.
We don't shout loud enough.
Yeah.
We're not making enough noise. You were saying that, Michelle, weren't you? We're not making enough noise about what we're going through.
No. Well, I mean, there's a couple of problems there. Is that a lot of people with chronic diseases don't advocate for themselves enough. But Parkinson's has that more difficult issue of apathy, lack of motivation. Going back to the very point of why we're talking here about speech, is that they're a lot of people, when they get to especially older people, they actually just give up because they can't get themselves physically heard. It's energy zapping. It's like, why would you bother? Your brain, as they say, Parkinson's tries to make everything smaller in our lives. It tries to make our walk smaller, our speech smaller, our swallow smaller, our gut goes smaller in terms of slowing it down. And so we have to make everything bigger. Hence LSVT big, LSVT loud, PD wire, big movements. Do you know? So we are so behind in this country in providing that therapy. That's what the WPC Congress really showed to me, is for a country that is leading in cancer and leading the way in heart disease and in doing well in type 2 diabetes. We are so far behind on neurology care for people with neurology. It's quite astounding.
So we're going to have to finish up there. Any last words from you, Richelle and Gary?
So, well, look, I mean, for me, I just want to say thanks a million, Lorraine, for giving us this platform to chat about it. I hope people...
No, it's been a pleasure.
listen to it. And, we really look forward to trialing an LSVT program online with you. I think that's our next step.
That's fun.
And yeah, I'll be continuing doing my voice and swallow exercises to keep me my throat and swallow strong. So thanks a million.
No problem at all. And you, Gary?
Well, all I'd say is, as with all of these kind of chats, and also with all the exercise I'm doing, it makes me feel really good. And I'm not cured, but I am better. That's the way I kind of feel at the moment.
Yeah, and that's really positive. And it's very true as well, Gary. So thank you both for joining me. You've both been great in advocating for other people with Parkinson's, because we all know there's a real need for more services and for everyone to have early intervention.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thanks a million. Have a good day. See you, Gary.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this video. If you would also like to spread awareness of Parkinson's and the importance of speech therapy and other services, please share this video.